Is Ahsoka episode 6 the best episode of the season? Well, in the first 3 episodes, the show's pacing was pretty slow. There wasn't too much going on. The first 3 episodes allowed us to catch up with the characters, learn what's been going on with them since the last time we saw them, and basically just setting up the future episodes. So none of the first 3 episodes are the best in the season so far, and rightly so. Moving on to episode 4, this episode was a lot better. It was more entertaining, there was a lot more fighting, the story actually progressed, the pacing in it was great, and it progressed the story along a lot more than the first 3 episodes did, and overall it was the best episode of the season at that point. But in my opinion, the next 2 episodes are much better. Now, moving on to episode 5, this one had Anakin's return. It had live action Clone Wars, we saw live action Rex, we saw many clone troopers in live action, we saw Hayden Christensen put on his best performance in his Clone Wars armor, we had live action Ahsoka, which was done a lot better than anyone thought it would. And as good as all of this is, really when it comes down to it, episode 5 of Ahsoka was just a nostalgia episode. Believe it or not, there wasn't a lot of story progression in it. It was just a reason to get Hayden back, which I and all Star Wars fans do appreciate, but it didn't do much for the story. All it was about is getting Ahsoka to want to live longer and get over her trauma. So on the story side, it's one of the weakest episodes, but because we saw Hayden return once again as Anakin, and we got to see Rex in a cameo. In fact, all the characters that we love in this episode are cameos, but it was just so good. When you're a huge Star Wars fan, you cannot deny what you saw in episode 5 was entertaining. But for story purposes, episode 6 of Ahsoka benefits and does the show more justice than episode 5. Episode 6 of Ahsoka is when the story really takes off. We see Thrawn, we see what he's up to, we get to see the new Beyond for the first time, we get a bunch of lore, we get to see Ezra again, we got to hear more about Baylan's story, we got to see the Night Sisters in live action. There was just so much in this episode that no other episode really comes close to, and because of all of this, it makes me appreciate this episode a lot more than even episode 5, because as I'm sure most of you know at this point, as much as we like to see Hayden return as Anakin, as much as we like to see Vader, Disney just brings these characters back for pointless cameos, and they don't really do anything with these cameos 99% of the time, and so it leaves us happy with what we saw, but at the same time it doesn't really help Star Wars in any way. It doesn't bring it back from the reputation that it has. The cameos don't improve the story. In fact, they take away from the story because they take up time where we could have story progression. And so episodes filled with cameos just feel like a lot of nostalgia bait that we end up enjoying either way. And like I said, don't do much for the story. So episode 6 is by far the best episode of the season so far. It's better than even episode 5. Although for Hayden alone, of course I'd rather rewatch episode 5 because it reminds us of the best of Star Wars. So even though episode 5 is the one that I would go back to watch, episode 6 does more for the show than any other episode, and I really loved it. Thrawn was awesome, very well acted by Lars Mikkelsen. Ezra looked great. He looks exactly how I'd imagine him to look in live action. So overall, this episode had great story and world building. It really does expand the world of Star Wars, and that is a very important element of the George Lucas formula, and I'm sure that we can all expect Dave Filoni to pay homage to George Lucas and his pure vision of Star Wars, considering he is the apprentice of George Lucas. And after watching this great episode 6, I cannot wait to see what the last 2 episodes have in store for us. Anyway, that's it for the video. How do you guys feel about this? Let me know down below. Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Let me know your opinion down below, and I'll see you on the next one.